Yes.
Adding one to the life is exciting.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 12, 2013 Board of Education meeting. First item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is to take action on the minutes of the July 8, 2013 regular meeting. Only one meeting, I guess. That's unusual. Yeah, summertime. Other than the negotiations meetings, which I understand. Another issue. In any event, July 8, 2013, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Changes, corrections, additions, clarifications? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Mr. Bishop,
I'm sorry, Mr. Bell, I'm going to abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is to review and approve the expenditures for the month of July. Mr. Bishop?
Yep, okay. You received two separate packets as far as finances. First one that we'll hit is the ending of the fiscal year 2012-2013 and the memo that Linda prepared that goes along with that. Linda's not here tonight. This is her vacation week, so she is away. Jason's here as some backup, and if we need to, we'll follow up with getting answers back out next week if we can't answer anything here. We did very well in terms of hitting the bottom line estimate that was announced last month, that we ended in the black. We ended closer to $100,000 in the black due to receiving funds back from the state that were unexpected, that were actually credited back to the 2010-2011 school year, and Jason can give more of those details on that that I don't have the good knowledge to give the direct answer myself. But that is the good news on that. The expenses were in line with what was done and estimates put forward. The encumbrances are fairly large compared to other years because a lot of the site improvement budget was held back for both timing of need to be done during the summer time period that we're currently under, as well as the risk earlier in the year of letting some of those contracts out without knowing where we were going to end the year. So that is a quick synopsis of those. If there are questions on the individual warrants or not, we did go over in the Finance Subcommittee a review and answer questions there. But the full board, any other people have questions?
Questions, comments?
No. And then on to the first period, which is the first month of 2013-14 year. Pretty straightforward. We had a small amount of expenditures comparatively to the rest of the month of the year. Most of it are payroll and benefits, and some prepay obligations on tuition for special ed that need to be made in order to have our special ed students for some institutions be paid and ready for the start of the school year at the beginning of September. And again, if there's any questions on it, we'll answer those.
Any questions, comments? Okay.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda. If not, no takers. Communications, anybody? I did forward to the board a very thoughtful email that I got from a gentleman here in town who has suggested that we revisit the issue of high school start time. We did look at this, I know, a few years ago, and I think Dr. Myers and somebody else suggested. Was that you? Somebody else suggested we take a look at it. And I'm certainly happy to do that. I think maybe what I would suggest is that I'll talk to Dr. Freeman about the best way to kind of take a look at that. This is one of these areas where everybody agrees that it would be the right thing to do, and everybody throws up their hands and says, how can we possibly solve all of the technical problems? with after-school activities and transportation and work and the rest of it. So let's take a look at it.
We have met at CO North. We've looked at some of the most obvious approaches to the busing schedules. So we do have information to begin. I don't know if we want to think about an ad hoc, but yes, we have some information to bring forward to begin the process. You're right. We absolutely recognize that starting our high school students later would be a good thing for those students in lots of ways. It's about how do we get there, how can we get there, and how do you do that as an individual district. But I think we'll talk about how to continue that conversation, and we've got some information to bring to that conversation.
Okay.
One of the members of the community came to this board meeting, I think 2 months ago, and talked about how the town or city of Norwalk was able to unilaterally, was it Norwalk?
Wilton.
Wilton, thank you.
Yeah.
Was able to do it. They faced the same obstacles that we do with regional sports, everything else. But they were able to accomplish it. It took a lot of work, it took a lot of time. And the beneficiary, of course, are the kids, because they will do better. There's no question. They will do better academically if they're not sleep deprived.
We do have some information on how they were able to make that happen, so we want to be able to learn from their experience. And those two gentlemen both approached me individually, and I've given contact information across so that they could talk to each other and combine their resources and discuss that collaboratively as well. So I think we should see maybe both of them come forward and be part of a conversation that we launch and continue.
Great.
Okay. Any other communications?
Other than shortly after 7 o'clock this morning, then I heard some communications from the back 40 over here with pile driving going on for the construction site.
Oh, great.
That Mr. Musetti I commented on when I saw him a little bit earlier this evening, that work obviously is continue here on a very rapid pace, and there will be blasting and other things going on that will be slightly disruptive, and people hopefully will tolerate. Just on the blasting piece, there was a both news article in the Shoreline Times and paper, and communication out to the neighbors within 250 feet of the border that's required by blasting regulations, and people were able to take advantage, if they wished, of a pre-blast survey of their house and property in case there was a change that was done. So those pieces have been done, and it's hopefully good stewardship and relationship to the adjoining property owners. That's a third-hand view. I'm not directly involved, so that's...
Are we going to get a report later? Okay, we'll talk about it in a little more detail later. All right, anything else? Student representatives, we will not have any for this meeting, obviously. How about, when are they going to come on board? September or October?
Would probably be the October meeting, if not for the September meeting. We may not have them in place for September. All of our representatives this year graduated, so we'll be seating 2 new ones.
Okay, superintendent's report, item 8.
Yep, thank you. I think this will be fairly brief tonight. I do want to point out to the board that on August 26th in the morning this year, we will be holding our annual convocation. Staff will be returning to work on August 26th. We will be holding our annual convocation at Woodwinds, as we did last year in Brantford, so that we can bring all of our staff members together in a professional setting. The approach this year will be a little bit different in that we are really viewing this convocation as the kickoff for an exciting school year, but in a sense as only halftime or intermission for deep professional development work that really began in the last 2 days of school in very late June. We won't be inviting in an outside internationally recognized guest speaker this year. There will be no Sugata Mitra with us this year, but Dr. Keene and I will be addressing the staff, building a theme around the various pieces of work that we have on our plate this year, talking about the year in front of us and how it will unfold, and spending a morning together recognizing new team members and celebrating the start of a school year before the staff members then return to their buildings for then 2.5 days of work at their schools, pulling together the strands of the various work that is on our plate this year. Significant work with special education as we unfold new programs through the district, significant work in every classroom as we fully implement the Common Core state standards this year, and work in a lot of levels around the new teacher and principal evaluations. So while we will not be rolling those out with every certified teacher this year, We will be rolling the new evaluation out with a third of our certified teaching staff, all of our certified administrative staff, and all of these strands really come together around the core mission about deep learning and rigor and instruction that invites effort every day on the part of students. So we do want to invite all of you to join us for coffee and a light breakfast at Woodwinds, to be with the staff if you're available. I'm sorry that I can only offer the two of us as speakers this year. We do not have an exciting guest speaker to share. It is August 26th at 8:30 at Woodwinds. We're also very excited about administrative vacancies that we have been filling. When you come to your personnel item, you will see that we have both Mr. Jason Scanziani, who is being put forward tonight to fill our high school special education coordinator position, and Mrs. Julia Chaff, who you are all familiar with. She has been an English teacher and a department chair and has presented in front of you most recently around rhetoric and argument.
Right, yep.
And she is coming forward to fill Mr. Guarino's office as the new assistant principal at Guilford High School. We have not filled all of our administrative vacancies at this time. We still have outstanding a position for high school dean that needs to be filled, and we still have outstanding a position for the elementary special ed coordinator that needs to be filled. We have our administrative retreat scheduled for later this week. The leadership team will be spending 3 days in the Guilford Public Library the end of this week, working on instruction, working on policy updates that this board has approved that need to be rolled out in the buildings. Most importantly, working with teaching and learning in the new evaluation systems. Those two positions won't be filled by that retreat, but we hope to have them filled by the beginning of school or very early in the school year, so that we have a full leadership team on board when the students return to us. And I also want to note that again this year I'll be working with an administrative intern. Mrs. Carol Swift, an elementary principal from Milford, will be shadowing to some degree this year. You may have a chance to meet her at board meetings, finance meetings, building committee meetings. She's very interested in. She will be joining us for part of our administrative retreat, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. And when she's able to join us here for a meeting, I'll certainly take the opportunity to introduce her to all of you. 2 items that don't appear on my report, if I could add those. I do want to note, if you are wondering why we have not presented any data from state standardized testing yet, we usually have a presentation for you by this point in the year. We do not at this point have any results that are publishable that we can share with you. We received almost late in the day on Friday preliminary information on this past administration of the Connecticut Mastery Test and the CAP test. We have just begun to unpack and analyze and make meaning out of those scores ourselves. We have a conference call scheduled with the commissioner tomorrow morning to talk about the embargo on those scores and when the embargo will be released and when we will be able to discuss those scores publicly. So we're still awaiting any sort of information that we can share about the scores and about how Guilford performed this year on that, what is now recognized as a legacy test. What may have been the last administration, or at least the last administration that would look familiar to us, of the Connecticut Mastery Test and the CAP test. But as soon as we have that information, and as soon as we have that in a format that is digestible, we'll have that and bring that forward to you. And then I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit later, but I did just want to note that work has begun in earnest here at the high school. Trees are being cleared, fencing is going up, new parking is going up out in front, and the foundation work is beginning out and back, and it is very exciting. I'm sure that Mr. Ireland and I will have more to say later in the meeting and answer any questions that you have as we move forward. Just to say that we're very excited about the beginning of real construction here on our new Guilford High School.
Well, could you elaborate on the embargo?
Yeah,
This is the first I've heard about it.
What's the state's
When the state, and
reason for
it's
the
not
delay?
unusual, every year the state scores are released in 2 phases. The state tries to get them out into the hands of folks like Dr. Keene as soon as possible, but they're held under an embargo until the state has the opportunity to formally release them.
In other words, we can't get them, and the state doesn't disclose them publicly until some period of time, and not a huge amount of time.
No, it's
like
just
a
from
few
Friday
days,
until
yeah.
probably sometime this
okay.
week.
So
We don't
it's a
want
timing
individual
issue.
school districts releasing their scores scattershot throughout the state. The State Department wants to make one release, and generally there's a press conference
And also
about the
to the
state results, and
press,
then each town can talk
probably,
about
yeah.
their individual results.
But
I
the timing
apologize
is
for how I
later.
phrased that.
It
But
is
the
what-
timing is later this year. Now,
6
what's their
weeks.
reasoning for that? Was there problems with initial scoring, that they had to go back and rescore it, or?
We hope to learn more tomorrow when we have a conversation with the commissioner in his office about the timing this year. Hard to say why they were delayed this year.
You know, Dr. Moore forwarded that email or the article about the New York
yeah.
Scores in New York.
and how they're going to the new test and their numbers went down, although arguably achievement didn't go down. All it did was they measured achievement in an arguably a more meaningful way, right? Is that something we're going to be facing in Connecticut? Not here just alone, but is that something we're going to be looking at in Connecticut?
Very much. We absolutely anticipate an implementation dip with the new assessment. And your point is very well taken. Students in Guilford do very well, and they've performed so well on the Connecticut Mastery Test that it's hard for us to take really meaningful information from that test. So the test maybe become more challenging. That doesn't mean that our students are performing any less well. But if we have an assessment that is more rigorous, that tests them more deeply, and our scores go down, it gives us more usable information to help our students achieve better moving forward. So it is sort of important to note for the community that when we shift to the Smarter Balanced Assessment for the first time, we should expect our scores to be lower than they have been historically on the CMT and the CAPT. And that's a good thing. It doesn't mean our students are doing worse. It means we're giving them a more rigorous test, and we're going to get more usable data to inform our instruction moving forward. But yes, we should expect that there will be a dip in our scores, and we won't be performing in the high 80s and low 90s in every area at every grade level, and that's okay. It gives us more to work with.
I mean, what's going to be interesting, though, is how we will, I mean, I know we're never supposed to compare other districts, but the fact that, notwithstanding that, you know, we've been doing parts of this for much longer than a lot of districts, right, between the professional learning communities and
Yes.
kind of the getting into the analytical thinking. And so I wonder if district that hasn't done that, that's been relying on kind of memorization, they're as shocking as it may be for some districts, there are going to be other districts that are going to be in a very difficult position, I would think. But we'll see.
And the scores will be on a much broader base. It won't just be the Connecticut Mastery Test. There are multiple states participating in the Smarter Balanced Assessment and multiple states that will participate in PARC, which is similar. So that news story won't be specific to Connecticut or Guilford. When that news story runs, it'll be a national story about how a new test was given in many states across the country and what are the scores telling us and how
So it'll be the same test in different states and I understand you've talked about how the test is going to be different from student to student depending on how the students do. But is it fundamentally the same? Are they measuring the same thing state to state?
Well, it's a computer adaptive test. Yes, it will be measuring the standards. It'll be aligned to the standards. But it is a computer adaptive assessment. So no two children, I mean, the likelihood of having the exact same assessment is probably very, very slim.
But it's
In
the
other
same
words,
program.
there's a huge pool of items, and as students respond, if they get one right, they get a more rigorous item. If they miss it, they get one that's a little bit less rigorous. And so you're finding exactly where they are.
But assuming it's a valid test, it's measuring the same.
Correct.
I was gonna
But
say,
I
it starts
haven't,
at the same
you know.
starts at the same place, and it sees how far you can go rather than everybody gets the same 100 questions and we see how many you get right. But we've yet to see any of the metrics, so we
Right.
don't know how students will be measured, scored, compared, and what local, state, and national data we will receive. We're still waiting to know what all of that will look like.
Was not doing the same, neither Smarter Balanced nor the PARC assessment, right? Is it their own state?
Yes,
They made their own assessment just
Yes.
specific to New York State.
yes.
And Smarter Balanced, you said PARC, is that the other one?
Yes.
Have they rolled out other states yet?
No.
No. Neither consortium will have a summative assessment until 2014, 2015.
And that's the first year we'll be doing it as
There
well?
will be pilots and field tests going on this school year, just like there were last year when we did our practice pieces. There have been Kentucky, New York State, there may be a couple of others, have produced what they say is a state-aligned test with the Common Core because they have been implementing it early. They are race to the top states, so
Right.
they had a lot of funding in
And a head
order
start.
to do some of that early work. And so Connecticut did put out a practice, a Connecticut-aligned Common Core state standards test just for volunteers. We did have 3 schools volunteer to participate. We haven't gotten any data back on it yet, though. So, we're preparing. We know what we're up against, and I think that everybody's going to rise to the challenge.
Smarter Balance released an unscored practice test that we had at all schools before the close of the school year. We're monitoring Smarter Balance's work very closely. There's nothing that they've offered or released that we haven't taken advantage of at this time.
Right.
We're monitoring very closely.
And we do have 2 staff members that are working with Smarter Balanced on what they're calling their digital library, which will be a professional development library, which is very advantageous to us because we get early looks at a lot of the resources. So we're excited. But we do have one of our literacy coaches was selected, and our math specialist.
Isn't there also a learning curve from the student's point of view in how to take the test? Because this is a totally new format, and it's not filling in the bubbles with a number 2 pencil the way we all did. And I imagine it takes some getting used to a computer screen. And
Actually, the kids did much, much better than the staff.
In those last 2 days of school, we also had all of our staff members take practice to see exactly what it means to take a test on computer. Reading an article on screen with digital tools to highlight and annotate is very different than what many of us are used to, and in fact, still much of what we ask our students to do. So yes, the way in which they take the test is going to drive some changes in instruction and assessment locally as well.
Yeah, but it mimics real life.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the theory.
yeah, that's a plus.
Okay, anything else, Dr. Freeman?
No, thank you very much.
All right, well, item 9 is the board agenda. We have a lengthy list of personnel items. If you would first please move to ratify the resignation of 2 administrators, Aline Nicolari, Coordinator of Special Ed, Pupil Services, and Pamela Hogarth, the high school dean.
So moved.
Second.
And with our deep appreciation, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then second, ratify 2 appointments. Jason Scanziano as Pupil Services Coordinator at the high school, and Julia Chaff as the Assistant Principal at the high school.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think this is the first internal administrative appointment we've made in quite a while, unless I'm misremembering.
It may be administratively. I know that the board recently I think we've appointed 2 literacy coaches very recently who were also both internal appointments, teachers who have moved to literacy coaching positions. And I know that there will be at least one other. In fact, I'll take a moment to mention that our internal candidates have interviewed very well this year. I have spoken to more than one facilitator of an interview committee who has come away saying that our people know what they're talking about, and they have done very well and outstripped some very strong outside competition to be placed in these positions.
Great. All right, and then a series of appointments of teachers. I'll just read them into the record. Betty Kaplan, Special Ed at Leighton Jones. Regina Santinello, Library Media Specialist at Jones. Robert McMillan, Baldwin Middle School, 5th grade. Kristen LeMay at Jones, Special Ed. Heather Whitaker, Cox School. Joseph Mangino, High School English. Joyce Ann Hippenbring at Cox, Reading Specialist. Laura Degree, Baldwin Middle School Special Ed. Danielle Bailey, Adams Special Ed. Megan Cassidy, High School Art Teacher, that's an 8/10 position. Julie Harrington, Adams Art Teacher. Robert Messer, Jones, Grade 3. Jennifer Bunger, Lakes Special Ed Preschool. Elise Sau,
I believe so.
High School Special Ed. Lauren DeStasio Zuck,
Yep.
High School Special Ed. Megan Morin, Cox Elementary School Special Ed. And Tara White, kindergarten at Leet and Cox. So is there a motion that we ratify those appointments?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Do you have a question? Yes.
No, I just noticed that can you comment on the fact that there seems to be a lot of special ed in here?
Yeah.
Yes, if you recall, at the end of last school year, Mrs. Brown and I made a presentation where we were noting the reduction in the tuition line and an increase in positions. So a number of these special education positions were created new at the end of last year to support some of the special ed capacity that we've been building across the district. So in addition to replacing some retirements, as we are in all areas in special ed, we also had the addition of, I believe, 5 teaching positions in special education at the end of last school year, going forward into this year's budget. We will end up having a transfer for the board from the tuition line into the salary line to cover that cost moving forward.
And are the anticipated outplacements for 13-14 holding consistent with what
Yes,
you
they are.
represented that they would be when we decided to hire the additional teachers?
Yes, by bringing these staff members in and creating these local programs, we are able to educate more of our students here in our Guilford schools, and therefore we have fewer outplacements than projected in this school year moving forward. When we met during budget season and projected outplacements for this year, Dr. Johnson presented a 5-year prospectus for you, and outplacements were well above 40 in that projection. As we move into the school year with these changes in place, we believe that outplacements will be below 30 as we go through this school year. There will always be some adjusting as the school year shakes out, but yes, we're reducing tuition to build our capacity in staff and district, and so there will be a shift from tuition spending to staff spending in this calendar year.
All right, good question.
Yep.
All right, I forgot where we were with the motion, but in any event, are there other questions?
Not another question, just an observation about the high quality of the applicants that you see here. Many already have master's degrees, many have from 10 to 12 years experience. A few are first year, but they're the high quality that you could see just looking through the what we get here, high quality of these hirees.
I've met with all of the candidates, and I can say that our principals and our administrative team who have led the hiring searches have done a spectacular job this year. I've been impressed with each and every one of them. It is one of the largest staff cohorts that we have, first-year staff cohorts that we've brought in some time, and they will be coming into work next week. We have our administrative retreat this coming week. Next week, we will have all of those new hires here for 3 days of new teacher orientation with Dr. Keene and Mr. Bowden. They will be here getting their orientation and settling in and learning the Guilford way, and we're very excited about the new talent we're bringing in this year.
Are there still openings that you hope to fill?
Yes, we're still finishing the hiring. I hope at your next meeting to have a complete report on teacher vacancy for you. We have only 2 administrative openings. We hope to fill those shortly. We're still closing some of the teacher positions, so I'm still meeting candidates. We're still signing some. We will have most positions filled for the opening of school, but we may need to open with 1 or 2 substitute teachers while we finish. It's been a significant amount of hiring this summer in what was a shortened summer.
Is one of those positions the Adams math teacher that they're adding?
No, that's the
No, I believe the Adams math position is filled.
Okay, we appointed that previously? is that right?
Last month we did.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, I think we already made the motion and seconded it and probably voted on it, but why don't we do it again, just to make it clear. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye again. All right, item 9.2 is to receive for possible action setting of district's priorities for 2013 and 2014. That this has been an item that we've considered before and urged a couple of modifications to some of the language. Do you want to talk about this, or?
Yes, I believe this is the 3rd time bringing this before you. We made significant changes after first sort of a workshop conversation we had around these. At our last meeting, we brought you an annotated and marked copy to show the evolution of these goals. This time we have a clean copy in front of you. The most change from the last time that we discussed, I believe, falls into priority number 2. And that was written last time to be about support of teachers. And I think we were questioned legitimately about whether this is about supporting the teachers, and if so, it should look in one sense. but it's really about the structures and systems that we have in place to support the teaching and learning that happens in the classroom. So priority 1 now, again, focuses on the student experience and works to tie all of our various strands together. All students will experience academic rigor every day in every class, as instruction will be aligned to the Common Core, integrated with the principles of learning, and measured by observations with the new Guilford Framework for Teaching and Learning. That second priority now is about the professional teaching and instruction that happens, and it reads that teaching and learning will be supported by subject area coaches and specialists, instructionally focused leadership, and professional learning communities, so that the two marry together to talk about the learning, the rigor in the classroom for the students and how we measure that, followed by the support systems and professional development in place to ensure that that's delivered at the highest level. The third priority is one with which you are familiar, and the only real difference in that from last year is the inclusion of language around healthy decision making as we look at the work and taking place in the community and partnering with the community to help students make healthy preventative decisions, as well as ensuring that we keep them emotionally and physically safe when they're here with us in school. So their priorities build on the themes that we have embraced over time, but they do evolve this year from the language that we had last year. We do have administrative retreat this week and staff returning next week, so we do ask for your approval of these so that we can have these to lead our work as we come back to school this year.
I'd say I appreciate the work that's gone into the revision thought process, and we're round 3. It may sound a little above and beyond our normal. I think it's a good thought process and appreciate the effort.
It's been a good conversation, and we're very happy with the language that has come from the conversation.
Move, we adopt it.
Second.
Questions, comments?
I mean, I fully support them. Maybe, I'm not an English grammar person, but it does read a little bit awkwardly, like the first and the third to me. All students will experience academic rigor as instruction will be aligned. And then priority 3, our schools will be safe in caring places by committing. I don't know if that's awkward to anybody else, but
I had the same reaction to number 3.
What's that?
I felt the same way about number 3.
Yeah, number 1, I think if you put the emphasis in the right place, it can be pronounced
Sort of like the
correctly.
codes, right?
But 3, I don't know if it's worth like, we will encourage safe and caring places for learning by committing to building or something
Why
like
not just
that.
take committing to out? That wouldn't,
Yeah.
Comma, committing.
Well, we're
Just
I
by
don't know.
building.
It just,
Yeah, take out committing to.
sorry to be picky. I just feel like if they're
No.
Yeah,
putting it
that
out.
does
I
work.
agree.
If we just struck committing to, that one would read, our schools will be safe and caring places for learning by building positive relationships and healthy decision-making within the school environment and throughout. It does read cleaner. We can approve that with the strike-through.
does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just
that's,
take out the word as in priority number 1 to read, all students will experience academic rigor every day in every class, semicolon. Instruction will be aligned to the Common Core
yeah,
state
I mean,
standards.
it really is kind of 2 sentences.
Yeah.
The semicolon is, I would approve that. I mean, I just think it reads better, honestly.
I'm
All right, so
perfectly
who
comfortable.
made the motion, Dr. Myers?
did.
Okay, so you'll accept that as a friendly
Accept.
amendment? All right,
Absolutely.
all right,
And
then
we can have this ready to go by Wednesday with those changes.
Is
Absolutely.
this ready for College English 4?
This is great. This is the writing process at work. I hope our students are paying attention.
I have one other thought, and it's the second of the initiatives, and it's about the word technical, and I think we're referring to the use of technology. So to me, I wouldn't have chosen the word technical because
Maybe
that
technology resources.
yes,
And-
or even
Yeah.
just technology.
Well, and I'll also note, we're carrying those again at the bottom for the board's information, but I don't feel that we're asking for approval on those. In fact, I
Okay.
think those may continue to evolve throughout the school year. And when we publish the priorities, they will probably be published cleanly as the 3 priorities. To me, that was to remind the board what we discussed through our budgeting process and what we see as the work attaching to these moving forward. So those can continue to evolve, yeah, as we go through.
Right, I like technology resources better. And I like technology resources too, because
Better
it's
than
not
technology.
just about just technology, because we're talking about a technology integration specialist. We're talking about, using or using technology in planning.
We're talking about community resources and the new policy that we wrote, that you approved, that allows students to bring technology from home into the classroom. So the resources do come from diverse areas, in fact.
Not to generate too much more work. Usually when you put like priorities together, they're priorities for the year. I've always looked at how to support those is almost quarterly. You look at what, like you said, they're always going to be changing and differentiating. So you look at them quarterly and say, look, did we achieve this? Because things like, expand literacy coach support. I mean, you might be able to do that in a couple of months, and then all of a sudden, what are you doing next? Or you're just going to drag that out a whole year. And I don't think anybody wants to drag it out a whole year, but at least you're setting, you're just reviewing them quarterly. And the more usually the faster you expand them, the more often you look at them.
But that may go to make the priorities be more of a living document through the year rather than something we do annually. I'd be happy to come back and report on those initiatives as they relate to the priorities through the course of the school year.
Okay, so with those corrections, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 9.3 is to receive for possible action special education transportation bid, which is a written exhibit, and it's a little bit complicated, as usual, or maybe even more usually. Maybe I can just summarize. We talked about this in the Finance Committee meeting, and there are approximately 20 different routes or thereabouts that we have now for several years broken up and went and have sent out a bid route by route, which has really turned out to be a tremendous saver to the district over time. There are 6 companies that bid on some of the routes. 1 company bid on all of the routes. 5 bid on anywhere from 2 to 12 or thereabouts. Our existing bus contractor, STA, has a contractual right to match the low bid for any of these routes. I think historically they haven't really done that very much, but they have the right.
Yes.
But there is a wrinkle, and that is that 2 of the routes to a provider called Giant Steps in Bridgeport have been, the low bidder is a company called People to Places from Bridgeport that has been the low bidder in at least 1 year past, and last year had a problem with the performance of the contract. They were unable to complete the year, and we had to get an outside vendor to try to fill the gap. There are only 2 bidders on those 2 routes. One of them, the low bidder, People to Places, is significantly lower than the high bidder. So on the one hand, there are competing issues here. The competing issue number 1 is the difference in the bids is somewhere around $20,000 over a course of a year. That's a lot. And that's something we would rather not spend if we don't have to for good service. The second competing concern, though, is this company able to perform the bid, given that they didn't perform the bid last year in effectively the same route, right? So I think what we suggested in the Finance Committee meeting was to award the bids to the low bidder for each of the routes except the 2 Giant Step routes, subject to the right of STA to match the low bid, and then allow the superintendent to investigate further the bid by People to Places, to get some assurance or some other information about how they are performing in other districts. Are they capable actually? Did they make? They say that they wrote a letter to us saying they made a mistake in their bid process last year and forgot to price in a pretty obvious component in the bid. And so, are they in the same place or are they in a different place now? So in any event, I think the Finance Committee thought that was a reasonable approach, given that we are pretty close to out of time, and we will not have another board meeting before this issue needs to get resolved. On the one hand, we'd really like to go with the low bidder. On the other hand, we don't want to buy the same problem that we bought last year, which is to try to scramble and find a provider in the middle of the school year, which is disrupting to the parents and the child and to the rest of the district. So, does anybody have any comments on that approach?
That's what we decided in the Finance Committee was a reasonable way to go, and the superintendent's discretion, subject to board approval at our next regularly scheduled meeting of the results of his decision, which could include researching other potential companies that would supply that same service that did not bid, and if that's the case, we may have some town council to provide legal assistance on the interpretation of how we do it appropriately.
Yeah.
We will appropriately vet all the bids.
All right, so is there a motion that we approve bids for the special ed transportation to the low bidders, subject to the contractual right of STA to match the low bids, except as to the 2 routes to Giant Steps? As to Giant Steps, the board grants the board would grant the superintendent authority to award the contract to the most appropriate bidder, subject to STA's rights to meet the low bid, and with prompt notification and approval at the September board meeting, and consistent with town bid protocols.
Second.
Well, it's your motion.
Oh,
So moved.
Okay, it's Mrs. Dudley's motion. Your second.
Second.
Okay, fine. Any other questions or comments?
well written out.
Just one thing, I mean, I think you do need to take a look at the cost it actually, the mistake they actually made this year. What did it really cost the district? I mean, it was a 2,000 mistake and it was a little bit of a headache. You're still saving $18,000, okay, even though it was a little bit of a problem. If it's a big mistake and it cost us $50,000, then obviously the way to go is with the higher bidder, okay?
Yeah, we talked, that's a fair.
I wasn't in
that's
the
a fair-
finance meeting,
yeah.
I didn't want to.
No, that's a fair point, but this is a big number, and
Yes.
and if we don't have to,
And then the difference between the other bidder that is lower on most of the routes and the only other one that bid on that particular route is significantly more in terms of what their ratio. So that's concerning to where would a third bidder be in the mix?
but the high bidder on that is the high bidder on lots of routes.
That's right.
So-
That was, excuse me, if I didn't say it right, that's what I meant.
Well,
When does our group get to determine whether they're going to take these or not? Does that come next?
STA?
Yeah.
Yes. STA has right of first refusal on all the bids, and so as soon as we have this approval tonight, STA will review all these and inform us of which routes they're interested in.
So it might be a moot point.
It could be a moot point.
that would be nice.
It has been
That would-
moved,
yeah.
Because
I saw
STA
that.
has done a pretty good job.
STA has done well by us, yes.
but in the past, they have never matched the low bid.
Silly question. So they come in between People's Places and Curtin Library, then what do you do?
Town bidding procedure does allow for you to pass over a bid that you feel is inappropriate or inaccurate, or if you lack confidence in that bidder. So I think what we need to do is we need to further vet this bid, and we can do that in the interim.
Okay.
A follow-up question then to what John just said. Would STA come in and say, we can't match them, or would they come in with a bid and then we see if they match?
I think I need to seek town council to determine whether or not
That's
the
appropriate.
bid that STA is matching is the lowest or the second to lowest bid based on our determination of this company's ability to meet their bid. I hope I've said that properly, but I will seek town council's advice before making that determination.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 9.4 is to receive for possible action the boiler cleaning bid. Dr. Myers, what did you find
This
about
one's a
that?
little easier than
Yes.
the other one. This bid is for boiler cleaning and burner tuning, cleaning, and calibrating for the next academic year. 4 vendors submitted bids with a range of costs from $6,016 to $19,980. The low bidder was Air Dynamics Heating and Cooling of Guilford, who is our current vendor for this service. And we're recommending that Air Dynamics Heating and Cooling be awarded the bid for the amount of $6,016.
Obviously Cliff knows about it and is,
Cliff is happy with it.
Satisfied with the service to date.
So that's a motion, Mr. Ireland, to approve the
That's a
bid?
motion.
All right, and seconded?
Second.
All right, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 9.5, act on recommendations from the Policy Committee on Search and Seizure Policy and Regulation. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, basically, this is, we've reviewed the search and seizure policy with looking at CABE's policy, and the committee reviewed and compared CABE and our policy, as well as other policies within the area. And so we updated the policy. I don't think there's a great many changes. Really just in language and updating it for current usage.
Is that a motion that we approve the policy?
It sure is.
All right, second?
Aye.
Second? Second?
Yep.
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I just had one simple question, because I'm not an attorney and I don't understand, but it says consistent with the Fourth Amendment. So could one of you attorneys explain whether the Fourth Amendment applies to children
Yes.
and how it works?
Well, it applies, but the Fourth Amendment says that people shall be secure in their homes and shall not be subject to an unreasonable search and seizure. So that's why you see the word unreasonable or reasonable in here over and over and over again. It's not a bright line concept. So what may be reasonable to one person may not be reasonable to somebody else, but courts look at it on a kind of an objective standard of reasonableness. A privacy right of a student in a school depends on what right it is that you're asking about. For example, a student has no privacy rights in a locker, effectively. That's been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, and the theory is that it's just like your locker at work, that it belongs to your boss, it belongs to it belongs to the school, it belongs to the town, it's not your private property. On the other hand, your backpack, you may have an interest of privacy in. So a school administrator may not be able to go into a backpack without some level of suspicion that there is contraband in the backpack. Now, that's also kind of on a broad spectrum, because if the suspicion is that there's a weapon, there may be less demanding a standard than if there's a bag of marijuana, which doesn't present a threat to other students. That's why the word reasonable is kind of a fluid concept. The only area where there is any real clarity is the areas of bodily searches. And the policy says we don't do strip searches. That's what the rule is. There are no. That's when you call the police and say, "Please, could you come over here and deal with this issue? We have a problem." And that's really the school administrators are not law enforcement officers,
Right.
and we don't expect them to be law enforcement officers. And when they start to get into these kinds of issues, they need to pick up the phone and call the police. And that's, I think, what this encourages them to do. But it is. The one-word answer, the one-sentence answer to your question is, if it's reasonable, it will be allowed. If it's not reasonable, it won't be.
I just ask, I mean, they have search and seizure, which says they may, subject to the requirements below, search a student's property, including property assigned by the district for students' use, which I would assume would be desks and school lockers.
Right.
Desks,
But
lockers.
then there's a whole, I mean, you have those three requirements, and then for desks and school lockers, you have three other requirements which seem to be very similar. I'm just wondering why you separate out desks and lockers from the policy as a separate.
Just because we want to make it clear that desks and school lockers are the property of the schools. They are not the property of the student. And it's make sure that it's public information put into their policy handbook, that they have no reason to believe that they have privacy in their desks or lockers.
Right, but is there a difference between the three requirements in the first section and the three requirements for desks and lockers?
Well, there are no requirements for desk and lockers.
Well, we're listing them.
Under the three in the policy.
There's the
The other,
informed
I mean,
advance part.
that's what the policy says, anyway.
Where are you
I hope you're not looking at what's been crossed out. And what you
The
need to be
underlined
looking at
above
is
the
an
numbered
administrator
section.
may search a student's locker or desk. There is number one, there is reason to believe the student desk or locker
Right,
contains
which is reasonable suspicion, right?
right.
But it's just, what we're doing is repeating the three requirements with using different language for desks and school lockers, when it seems to me if you just said property assigned by the districts for students' use, in parentheses, including desks and school lockers, it just doesn't make sense to me to have three very similar conditions in two separate sections, but maybe, again, I'm not a lawyer either, so.
Because one that I think is particularly important is the third item listed under desks and lockers. which is the fact that they can be looked at, examined at any time for any reason, even periodically. This says inspected periodically, which implies without any particular reason.
Right.
And the difference is that, of course, it's the desks and lockers are the property of the school, whereas the top section is not. So I don't see what number 1 and number 2 add in the second section, but I think new number 3 is really the important difference.
And that's a fair comment, that if lockers don't require, well, I'll tell you, I think what the reason is, it says individualized suspicion. Or is that the old version?
Isn't there
I just
slightly
saw it.
different
Individualized is
language?
in the top section.
Individualized reasonable suspicion.
I mean, technically, you really don't even have to have any suspicion for a school locker.
To search a locker.
Right.
So, I mean, you could just
Right,
say...
I think this
mean,
first section is a little different than this desk and lockers, because there's no thought that desks or lockers are protected by this reasonable suspicion. They can be opened
Right.
at any time by the principal. You could be asked to go into the locker or your desk and clear it out at any time.
Well, that's not what the policy says, though.
I think it does. Where do you see that?
An administrator may search a student's locker or desk under 3 conditions. Reason to believe that there's probable presence of contraband, that the presence poses a serious threat, and that the student has been informed, which is all fine. It's just that those are the conditions that you're saying that you can go in a locker or desk, right?
But I think it's said a little bit differently than what is up at the top paragraph, which is for all searchers for evidence. I think we just
Well,
want,
here's the-
we
here's
make
the- okay.
sure that students understand that desks and lockers are a little different category.
the policy just referenced Connecticut General Statute, Section 5433N. That actually provides protection to students that's a little broader than the Fourth Amendment, a little broader than the federal Constitution. And that actually has language similar to the old or current policy. It says boards of ed may authorize the search by school or law enforcement officials of lockers and other school properties available for use by students for the presence of weapons, contraband, or the fruits of a crime. If the search is justified at its inception, 1, and 2, the search as actually conducted is reasonably related in scope to the circumstances which justified the interference in the first place. So I think you've got to track that language, don't you? It's a statute.
It's what we're tracking in the first 3, yes. Reasonable suspicion and reasonable in scope.
I think the first paragraph that you were talking about where school, it's the property of schools and so we have a right. It says the right to inspect desks and lockers assigned to students may be exercised by school officials to safeguard students, their property and school property with reasonable care for the Fourth Amendment rights of students. So that is like, the right to inspect also requires protection of each student's personal privacy and protection from coercion. So that's almost like a group. Like if I needed to see, a whole wing of lockers, there's been stuff going on, lockers have been set on fire or something. This next part I interpret as being if there's an individual locker that you're going to inspect, one student, you've got to have kind of a reasonable suspicion that you need to go and inspect that. It's not fair, to say, he's inspected my locker once a week, for the last 6 months and nobody else's locker. So it's, that wouldn't be right for the student. So I kind of look at it as an individual, but we're using it as the model from CABE as well as some of the others. We were trying to be very careful to include things that we thought we needed. We knew that ours was outdated. This is one that we had never reviewed since 1998. And we knew we needed to do a little bit, not that there was an issue that came up about this one was just on the list to be reviewed. We did make another change. Dr. Myers had asked to add the date and time of parent notification under the documentation, and we did add that, and that's
In the
in
regs.
reg.
Under the reg,
Under the red.
rest.
And those were the only other questions that we had during, this last month.
Okay. I see the distinction you're making, that in individual students locker, I think frankly, you could probably go a little further if you wanted to. On the other hand, it's not a very high standard.
It's
anyway.
not, yeah, it's not a very good practice.
I'll defer to anybody who wants to either move that we adopt this or that we table it.
I move we adopt it.
Okay.
I
And I
second.
will second, yep.
All right, any other questions or discussion? I mean, and I take it you need to have something before the student handbooks go out, is that the issue?
Failure to adopt this would simply mean we work with the existing policy.
That's
Yeah.
right.
I think it's
All
fine.
All right, so a motion's been made and seconded, any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, and then the regulation, that just, is there anything additional on that, Mrs. Denby? Does that just track the policy?
Mostly cross-outs as opposed to ads.
Right, your
Checklist.
The regulation, didn't really make too many changes. In the first part, the second lockers and other school property, we crossed out a lot of unnecessary language and clarified the language in places. Basically, that's what we were trying to do, to make it clear.
Okay. All right, is there a motion that we adopt this regulation?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions, discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Then we're into 9.6, right? Is that it for policies?
That's
All
it.
right.
It is.
9.6, possible action on the superintendent's evaluation and contract terms for 2013-2014. Just to refresh everybody's recollection, we did extend Dr. Freeman's contract for a third year with the expiration of the past academic year. At, I believe, our July meeting, we deferred the issue of what his compensation would be for 2013 and 2014 for a couple of reasons. One is that we wanted to take a little more time to look at the contractual factors that we have for his compensation, and then also to do a little work on what comparable districts around the state are paying and some of their other practices. Just to remind everybody, Dr. Freeman's salary, his base salary for this year is $187,369, plus an $18,000 annuity that vests gradually over a 5-year period. And for several years now, I think for probably 8 or so years, we have had a contract with the superintendent, both Dr. Freeman and his predecessor, that is explicitly based on merit pay. This is the only contract in the district that we have that, I believe, and is certainly in this much detail, and has 8 specific factors as to what his performance would be measured on in setting his compensation that can range contractually anywhere from a 0% increase to a 6% increase under the contract's terms. We did discuss in executive session Dr. Freeman's performance over the past year, and I think I can summarize on behalf of the board that the board is extremely pleased with Dr. Freeman's performance, believes that he has met or substantially exceeded expectations in virtually all of these areas, and we believe that if we're going to have an honest merit pay-based system, we have to be honest about not only expressing concern about substandard performance, but also expressing satisfaction with a higher level of performance. And the good news is that that's, I think, where we are. Of course, that might cost us $1 or $2 more. On the other hand, if the choices are between a lousy superintendent and a 0% increase, and a really good superintendent and a more than 0 increase, I'll take choice number 2. If you don't mind. So I think I've talked with almost everybody about this, and I think that it would make sense to do the following. That if we increased Dr. Freeman's base salary to $192,990, increase the annuity from $18,000 to $19,500 with the same vesting rules as before, and this would obviously not be retroactive to past years, it would be only for this year moving forward. And actually next year, technically, it's subject to renegotiation. So, and then to add a new issue, a $3,900 medical account. Dr. Freeman's got some specific teenager-related issues that I'm sure all of us with teenagers are facing, but it is a way to really awards a partial compensation in a way that may provide some tax advantages and some sheltering, although maybe not. That's not our problem. That's frankly Dr. Freeman's problem. And that's what I told him. Was that a motion, Bill? It is almost.
It's his problem, not ours.
I just want to run. The total of this is 5.36%, but $1,500 of it does not automatically vest, and it does not vest for a period of 5 years in total, so that the actual number is in fact less than that. It depends on where you want to figure the last date is to determine. But I think that we are all very thankful for the job, very encouraged by the job that you and everybody obviously on the administrative team has done, and the faculty for that matter. You're in a different position because you have agreed to bargain in a very much a market-based system individually, as we're obligated to do with the superintendent. So I think we are very happy to be in the terrific superintendent paying a little bit more category. So that would be an invitation to a motion. Mr. Ireland, is that your motion?
Invitation.
Yes. Chair can't make motions.
Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any other questions, discussion, comments? Feel free to make comments, by the way. This is obviously one of the most important functions, if not the most important function of this group, is to interview, hire, and retain the superintendent, supervise the superintendent. I think this is a very, very important part of what we do.
Yeah, I would echo.
Part of the process was that the contract specified various goals that we expected the superintendent to achieve in that contract year. And we outlined them, and Dr. Freeman responded eloquently to all of those goals, and we agreed that he has met them. I think it's incumbent upon us going forward now that we also have set goals for the future, so that a year from now we can ask him whether he has met the goals, and we could then base his compensation on achieving or not these goals. And I see this as a fluid process that we should do every year. So I don't know technically how we do this, Bill, but it seems to me we have to really sit down and define what we expect going forward.
I was planning on putting that on a September agenda, actually.
Okay.
And so we will have some discussion about that. But
Good.
that is a fair observation, and we will follow through.
I think the original contract, there was something about a potential moving stipend.
Yep.
Is that still in effect, or is
Still
that?
open. Happy to have Dr. Freeman move to the district.
I thought there might have been a year term on it, or after 2 years or something. I can remember.
I don't think so.
No.
If there is, I take
So
it would be the board's interest to keep that open.
Yeah. No, I didn't know if it was revolving. I just wanted to make sure it was there.
I'll look at that and make sure. I think it is open.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as I went back to
Yes.
the contract, and Bill and I sat down with Dr. Freeman a couple weeks ago to go over the details here and to relay comments and things out of our general session. And I'd just like to echo with Bill that very pleased with your performance and your leadership and the risks that you've taken going forward, which then compensation is related to risk and the rewards that come along with it. And we have a great team behind you as well. You also are the leader, and that sets you at a different place than the rest of the team for what they're contractually obligated compared to where you are. So I'd just like to make that distinction in terms of what changed in his salary and pieces of the package are compared to what others would be getting as well.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, all in
Could
favor
I
of the
just
motion?
ask for clarification? I know there's been some discussion about this just in terms of, we had allowed up to 6% increase. Was that in salary alone or the total compensation?
Total.
Okay, so
Everything.
we're very close to
Yes,
sort of the maximum that we're allowed under the contract. Is that accurate?
yes.
Well, I mean, it depends on, we're somewhere between the high 4s and the 5.39, depending on how long he stays.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly toward the higher end than the lower end, and look, I think I can say that there are board members who thought that that it would be entirely appropriate to have a 6% increase. I told you that, Dr. Freeman, and I think there are some substantial arguments in that direction, and there is but I think that kind of the gravity of the consensus was that somewhere in this area would be reasonable, based on all sorts of issues, not just related to Dr. Freeman, but related to the town as a whole and the economy and so forth. But I think I've said this to most of you. If we had known that Dr. Freeman was going to perform as well as he was performing, we would have started him much higher than we did, and.
That's true.
So it's worked out.
That's true.
Yeah, it is true. And I mean, he took between Dr. Porcel and Dr. Freeman, it was a substantial reduction, subject again to the vesting of the annuity issue, but it was a substantial reduction from what we were paying Dr. Freeman at that time in salary.
Paying Dr.
Dr.
Porcella.
I mean, Dr.
Porcella.
Porcella at that time in salary at that time. So.
Again, it's a market-based situation, and at a change, then you are really looking at market forces and the persons you are, wanting to bring in. And so we could be faced with a substantial change at the next, venture, whenever that is, as well, that would... Right, very long time, and that's
Don't
part,
go there.
retention, as Bill said earlier, is one of our goals, that we're looking for Dr. Freeman to remain with us for a reasonable number of years, as opposed to the grass is greener somewhere else. We think it's pretty good here in Guilford, and the new high school and all the other things go along with it, and keeping the energy of Mr. Mercenti harnessed on his golf cart, checking out the construction project.
It's part of it. Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Well, thank you again, and we are delighted that you are continuing your work with us, and hope that this seems reasonable to you, and look forward to setting goals for next year and having a similar discussion a year from now.
It is very much appreciated. Thank you for your confidence and for your support and for your continued partnership. It is a pleasure to be here in Guilford. Thank you.
Item 10 is unfinished business, which we'll skip over. Item 11 is committee reports. Policy committee, anything
Nothing.
else?
No.
Facilities committee? What's going on in our facilities, Mr. Ireland?
Well, you want to know about facilities or the high school first?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Oh, thank you. It looks like the facility needs assessment's coming in this week, so it looks like we're going to have a facilities subcommittee meeting probably on the 26th, Monday. Okay, in the evening, we might want to make it in the morning, but as we get closer, we'll know more on that. But the draft is due this week. Cliff wants a chance to take a look at it. Projects are all moving along. The only one that it sounded to me that'll still be ongoing, which we knew about, was I think the Cox windows is the only thing that's going to kind of push into the new year, barring any, I don't know, fall hurricanes or anything like that. We should be okay with all of the other projects being completed before the school starts.
John, excuse me, could you remind us where those windows are being put in at Cox?
Everywhere.
The
Everywhere,
school.
right? I mean, that's what I thought. It's not isolated. No, but that's a question. It wasn't isolated. It's not isolated to the,
No, this is
particular.
a major project.
Right, okay.
I mean, this is by far the biggest project during the shortest
Right.
summer. So that's why it's going into the new year. Obviously, they'll be working on off hours when the kids are there, but they're trying
Right.
to do areas that are not the least amount of impact. You might see some boards up,
Yes.
Right.
where doors are still on their way in and stuff like that. But
Okay.
it'll
There
be
will-
safe and it'll be clean.
Yeah, there will be some boarded windows until all the windows arrive and can be installed appropriately, but they'll all be secured and they'll all be safe.
So, in terms of the high school, As I mentioned last time, the bids were due in, the bids came in. It looks right now that about, in our favor, about 5%, which is good to hear.
That's real money.
It's very good.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
That's terrific.
However, just so you know, they're going to talk tomorrow. You know, as you go along this whole process, you always have contingencies as well, and you have bid contingencies. Well, now those bid contingencies can kind of go away. There's still a couple of small ones in there, but they go away, and that gets now tacked on as potential opportunity to spend money on ad alternates. The ad, so that's about $4.5 million. Ad alternates right now are about 2.7. Okay, so
All of them?
all of them. That doesn't mean that you do them all either. Okay, that means now you have, because sometimes ad alternates come in as being, you know, we had Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Plan A was what we're going with. Plan B is if we get a little money. Plan C is what we really wanted. Okay, so you might end up actually looking at those ad alternates again, knowing that you might want to spend a couple extra $100,000 on something. You know, hindsight's 20/20. Of course, if everybody knew this, they might have done a few things differently. They're now starting to look at things, getting down to the FF&E. They're getting down to things like wood ceilings, you know, aesthetics, improving the atmosphere, improving sound reduction, things of that nature. And they're really going into some good detail about those particular items because some of them are going to be seen as maybe flashy, and you want to make sure there's good reason behind doing that. Okay, I don't think they're going to take a look at, well, maybe we should put that big earth tunnel in. Yeah, that's not happening. That ship's kind of sailed. So we're down to some of the other minor things or smaller things. But they're also taking a look at it for, like, if you put wood ceilings in, who's going to maintain them? Can you get in underneath if you did need to do wiring? Can you know, how easy are they? So there's a lot more to it than, hey, that looks good, why don't we do that? So, and they are doing a good job.
Sort of biggest cost ad alternates were, I mean, as I recall, when we talked about it,
The entrance.
what's that?
The
The
entrance?
entrance.
Canopy on the canopy on the way in.
Canopy on the way in.
Black Box Theater.
Black Box, the Black Box was never
An ad
priced as an ad alternate, so the Black Box Theater could be a conversation, but it would be a very different conversation than the ad alternate conversations. The ad alternates were,
So that was not put on as an ad alternate?
it was never priced as an ad alternate, no. An ad alternate needs to be something that's fairly contained and easy to price that way.
That was what kind of my comment on the 2020. As it's very hard to architect something with this one big space that says, well, we might have it, we may not have it. So what you do is you don't have that space. And when you don't have that space, then the only way you can add alternate is making it external space. Well, going from internal to external space increases the cost of that space, I don't know, 5 to 10-fold.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you know, 2020 says, oh, we definitely should have kept it. Okay? But the process they went through, it says, look, we'll keep it on an outside piece. Okay? But understand it's going to be a lot more money than if we do it that way. Not only that, they did a really nice job at making sure there was equal type of space that could be used for that type of activity.
Yes.
So I think that was really important, and they dealt very well with all the constituents involved, teachers, students, administration, in terms of what that means and what it means not to have it and what it meant to truly have it in there. Okay. So there was a lot of that. There are some. There's also some things that are, I think, that were external, landscaping issues, things of that nature that, you know, do you want 1, 2, or 3, you know, bushes? Do you want to be how high? Do you want them start them small? You know, $15 for the small one, $500 for the big one. You know, there's all little stuff like that they're going to start talking about and looking at as time goes on.
Some significant ones are upgrading from vinyl tile to porcelain tile so that we have floors that don't require regular waxing and buffing. So we have some of the ad alternates that are more expensive to purchase as we move in, but will reduce maintenance costs and time in the future moving forward.
Yeah.
So some of it may not make a big visual change, but will give us a building that is more durable and more easily and more efficiently maintained for years moving forward.
There's items that you look at there like that might be a capital expense today that you took out in lieu of having an operating expense going forward, even though the capital expense today in the long term might actually be more economical, but it's hard because you have a fixed capital budget.
Right.
So now they can take a look at those fixed capital items. They might bring some back in that give us better returns on our dollars in the long term, which were excluded at the beginning just because of that one constraint that this is your budget. Okay. And they have been having meetings with the neighbors on a regular basis about some of the concerns and stuff like that. I mean, it is a big project. Hopefully people had a chance to go maybe drive in, take a look around, and take a look at it. Don't forget to wear your hard hat. That's it on facilities.
Terrific. Well, that's,
Thanks.
as usual, a busy summer, but even a little busier than typical. Finance Committee, anything else?
Nope.
We've already done that. Town Committee liaisons, anything going on?
I'll just make one note. The Land Acquisition Commission has not had a lot of activity in the last year or so due to a combination of economy and so forth. But I've had the pleasure of putting another set of time in on that one as the Board of Ed liaison, and as I finish up my service on the Board of Ed, that will create another opportunity for somebody else to step into that position. So I just throw that out there for anybody who's got that interest that will be serving on the Board of Ed. And also note there are several at-large openings for the Land Acquisition Commission as well. And so if you know anybody who is interested in serving on that, then you can contact myself or contact the First Selectman's office and put your name and get information. There's information on the town website on each of the boards and commissions and the charge and the duties of it. So the Land Acquisition Commission is listed there. So throw that out there for a sales job to seek more volunteers. So thank you.
All right. Public questions, anybody?
I have a couple questions. One was a little serious and one's a little less serious. The serious one, Cipriano?
Yes. Chef Tim Cipriano has taken a job with Chartwell's Food. It is a large food conglomerate. They service school districts across the state. He will initially be the food service director for Fairfield schools, and I expect, not Fairfield, Farmington schools, and I expect in short order that Chef Tim will be responsible for multiple school districts or following a VP track. We do not have a VP track for foods in Guilford Public Schools. I think that Chef Tim has done good work in a year. I think that he has improved the image of Guilford Food. I think that he has improved the quality. We have secured an interim food service director who will open schools for us and make sure that we have lunches on tables on day one. And we will be going back out and conducting another search to find the next director for Guilford Public Schools, somebody to build on the work that Tim did while he was here. And I have already received volunteers from the community. We have some people in our community who are very involved in the food industry. They work in collegiate foods in local universities, very well versed, very well connected, and they're willing to serve again to help find us our next food service director.
One of the things I heard was the fact that the commute gets kind of tough. We have others in administrative positions that have long commutes. And hopefully we're talking to them, I guess. I don't know. The less serious one is Mr. Macente understands that it sounds like his assistant principal was teaching a course on arguments, and he's okay with that, right?
You want a team that will challenge you along the way and question your thinking.
Just check.
Interesting to see how that works out.
Charlotte.
All right.
Would you like to audit the course?
It's just purely entertainment value.
Any other questions from the public?
Mr. Macente should audit the course.
Okay. We do have some items for executive session. We have specifically an update. 13.1 is an update on expulsions. And then 13.2 is that we are in the negotiation process with both the Guilford Education Association, the teachers, and also the administrators union. And so we are going to go into a brief executive session to talk about...
May I ask that we invite Mr. Bowden to join us?
Of course. Sure. There will be, after we adjourn and go into executive session, we will come out into public session only for the purpose of adjourning, and there will be no further public votes this evening. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.